Hi, and welcome back to our Wild Wednesdays. You've been joining us, and we've been talking about the flora, the fauna, the beauty, the natural abundance that surrounds us in Onslow County. And we thought it would be really fun to go out on a nature hike. That's one of the great things now during COVID and any time that we can do here in Onslow County is get out and explore the nature that's around us. Now, I have always got my backpack with me, my trusty backpack, and in my trusty backpack, whenever I hike, the first thing I want to take is plenty of water. Wintertime, summertime, springtime, or fall, we need to stay hydrated. So that's first thing. I've got a disposable bottle, a one-time use bottle, but we can recycle this, and so we're gonna drop that in our backpack. Other thing, sunscreen, always sunscreen. Even on hazy days, we want to remember that. Insect repellent. You know, we got lots of things that like to bite us. Mosquitoes, ticks. We want to make sure that we apply this liberally and apply it, you know, around the cuffs of your pants. So we're going to use our insect repellent. I like to have binoculars because I love to bird, and so looking for birds is one of my favorite things. I've got my binoculars. Now, in a time of COVID, it's just me gonna take this hike today, and I've already kind of looked around the trail. There's nobody else out here, but in a time of COVID, we wanna make sure that we carry our mask. We want to make sure that we bring our mask back out with us. One of the things that we've discovered during this time is that this is becoming a real source of litter, and we don't want to do that. We want to be responsible. So I've got my mask in case I encounter anybody else on the trail. And finally, I've got my nature journal. I always have a nature journal with me. I love to write down what I see, when I see it, where I see it, and this is going to be your nature journal. You can pick this up with your kit at the museum or here at the Environmental Education Center, or you know what, we've got it on our website. You can just print it off. And this is a great journal for using this summer. You know it's yours, put your name on it. And then inside, we've got our nature checklist. We've got how you're feeling on the day that you're exploring nature. Maybe you can make some sketches of what you've seen, but note the season, note the time of day, because what you see, when you see it, will change. So we've got plenty of opportunities for you to fill that out. And then in the back, we've got some fun things for you to do. We've got a coloring page for you and a search kind of matching game for you. And so this is really, look, word search, everything you could want right here in your very own nature journal. So you can just go to the Onslow County Museum's website and print this off. So what are we going to find today? Well, let's look at our nature journal. What can we find today? Now, it can vary from day to day, season to season, but let's see what's out here today. So it's July. First thing I'm going to note is it's super hot and humid today. We're going to use all of our senses. So it feels hot because it is hot. Then we're going to note, you know, it's a little bit overcast, a little bit cloudy today. We're going to listen for what might be out here. We know that this is cicada time, so you might hear some buzzing off in the distance. We're going to use our eyes, certainly. So then we're going to also use smell. And as we get onto the trail, I'll point some things out that you might note how it smells. Are you ready for an adventure? Let's go. As we head out on the trail, the first thing I'm going to do is look over what's on my list today. So a brown leaf, a rock, spider web, flower, tree, lizard, butterfly, cattails, birds, green leaf, grass, pine needles, water, animal tracks, a feather, a bug, a fern, a stick, some berries, and pine cones. Again, this might change from season to season and the abundance of things, but let's see what we can find as we start off. Of course, we are surrounded by beauty here. This is 96 acres of wetlands. So trees, 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 and more trees. And as we go along, the first thing we want to point out is some of these trees that are native and some that have been introduced. These are some natural. These are some hollies that are here. And you know what? What's on our list? Berries. So we see lots and lots of berries in there. We don't want to pick these things. We want to leave them because, you know what, we can observe them. We can check them off our list, but we don't have to take them home with us. They're better right where they are. Now, kind of buried down and deep into this overgrowth area, already we see some pine cones. We know that we've got these tall stands of pine trees here. And so we're gonna see lots of pine cones and lots of pine needles. That's an easy find, right guys? Now, a little bit trickier for us is we've got lots of cattails. The thing is, our cattails haven't all sprouted out yet. So if we see, we'll step off the trail just a little bit, but we can see the cattails growing. You know, cattails are really protected. They are a great sign of our habitat and the amount of water. Hasn't rained in a few days since we've been out here, so you can see where there would be naturally a little bit of a stream here. It is a little bit dry right now. The minute it rains, this will fill up and be wet again, but the ground is always a little bit soft, a little bit squishy, and down inside a little bit moist. Okay, if we stop for just a second and listen real closely, we can hear those cicadas. Cicadas are these wonderful insects that have these great big compound eyes, beautiful wings. They will first be in a larval state. They'll shed their shell, and sometimes we even are fortunate enough to find their shells, their leftover shells, hanging after they hatch from the ground, and then begin to metamorphosize, to change into a flying insect. We might find their shells that they shed, and then we'll see these beautiful flying cicadas. So also on our list, flowers. Again, this is going to change seasonally, but you can see the beautiful variety of wildflowers that we have growing here. It also depends on how wet the soil is. And we have seen since we built this center that the actual flora and fauna has changed a little bit. As it was cleared, this was once all timber. Then it was cleared. This area was used for different reasons and different purposes, but as a wetlands, it is always protected and can't be developed. So let's take a little bit more. We're gonna come here around the trail. This is one of my favorite things to point out. Sometimes we wouldn't even think about looking, but do you see how there's a clearing in between the growth in the trees? That's actually a wildlife trail that animals would take. So we might have coyote or raccoon. We might see possum, all using this little trail. This is their roadway. This is their path through the wetlands. So when we look at this area, sometimes we find little reminders. Sometimes the animals leave scat for us, and we found coyote scat. I don't see any today, but sometimes we find that along the trail. You can see we got a little bit of rock down here, which is also on our list. But I love in nature that we need to always be looking. Look up, look down, kind of look all around. You know, if we think, sort of like animals do, to always be on the alert. If we listen real closely, we've got some birds talking to us this morning too, chirping. All right, a few more things we want to point out. Certainly this is where it's pretty low. This area can be really wet, guys. We can see where the ground has dried a little bit. This will immediately, minute it starts to rain, and it's supposed to rain later this afternoon, it's gonna fill right up. Now, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about is when you're on a nature hike, is safety. Certainly, we're aware of the weather. We've looked at the weather forecast. We know it's gonna rain. We don't want to be outside when there's any threat of lightning and severe weather, high winds. So always check the weather forecast before you head out on a hike as well, and make sure that if you're going to a place to hike where you know the weather changes quickly, is be prepared. Maybe take some all-weather gear, some rain gear with you as well. All right, a few more things we want to point out. We've got beautiful wildflowers, pine trees. These are some beautiful loblolly pine, but here in eastern North Carolina, we're also pretty famous for our longleaf pine. Those have the great big pine cones. As we walk along here, we might see there's some insects crawling along. Everybody, you know, we look for all of these creatures because every single one has a role to play. We've seen lizard today. We've heard birds today. More pine trees, some beautiful flowers. The last place we want to go is we're going to stop right here at one of my favorite little corners here, because this is such a great view of the wetlands. And as we look around, we can listen. There's that wind. Okay, so let's kind of come up here, because nature has left us some little bit of hints about who lives here. So right here is not only my favorite corner, but apparently it's the favorite corner of some of our squirrels. Our squirrels who live here in this wetlands will perch. They'll get a pine cone, they'll sit here and open up the pine cone, and you can see some of the petals from the pine cone, and they will get the seeds that are deep inside. I don't know if we can find any today. We're gonna look. So we can kind of see these petals, and if we open it up, there'll be seeds down inside sometimes, and that's what the squirrels are looking for. They're not eating the pine cone, they're eating the good seeds that are full of protein that they need and nutrients, and that's what they want. Here in the summertime, there's an abundance of food for all the wildlife: berries, nuts, and then of course the food chain. So one thing that eats the other. For example, we have bats out here. We love the bats because the bats and of course the dragonflies are eating the mosquitoes. So we're talking about, and we can see and observe right here the food chain. We invite you to come out. The last thing we're going to look at is we're going to come right down here to the end of the trail. Along the way, we've spotted some animal tracks. We've seen these grasses that grow, and all of this attracts different wildlife. We know that the seeds on the grasses are delicious to some animals, the berries, the water, and we want to make sure that this stays as clean and clear as it can be. So if you hike in here, we don't want you to bring any trash and then leave it. So please remember to take your trash with you. Now this, as you see through the tree opening there, is actually part of a much bigger trail. This is called the Mountains to the Sea Trail. And if you wanted to, and many people have, you can actually hike all the way from the mountains of North Carolina all the way to the coast. And this connects with that trail. So you can actually be part of this much larger trail. So thanks again for joining us for Wild Wednesdays. And remember, whenever you're heading out on a trail, be prepared, have everything ready, and then get ready to enjoy and explore Onslow County's beautiful nature.